Thanks again for joining us here on the Gill Athletics Connections podcast. This is really, truly an honor for me. I have the head coach of the University of Florida, men's and women's. He's the first combined head coach for University of Florida, Mike Mouse Holloway. Coach, thank you so much for joining us today.
You're very welcome, Mike. It was a pleasure, absolute pleasure to do this.
I know you are typically busy on an April day, but of course, unfortunately, we don't have any track to practice and meets to go to, but I do know you have been busy. You've been doing a lot of things with the Coaches Collab group inside of Facebook. You're doing an amazing job on your personal Facebook page of posting so many track and field highlight clips. It almost makes me feel like I'm in track season. I'm getting to so many highlights from your team.
Yeah, I think that's part of, I'm trying to make myself feel like I am in track season. And also I wanted to make sure that, it's important to me that the alumni and, everybody that's come through the program knows how much they were appreciated. And this has given me the time and opportunity to do that. So that's a big part of why I'm doing that stuff.
That's a really great point about not just our insular team, our athletes, our current athletes and our current coaching staffs, but the alumni that are out there. And even for a program such as University of Florida, the fans that you have, people who aren't alumni and things like that, who just follow along Florida Gator track and field. One of the topics I'd love to start out with here is you came straight from the high school level to the college level. You were coaching at, is it Buchholz High School? Am I pronouncing
Buchholz
that right?
High School, yeah.
Which is there in Gainesville. And you came on as the assistant coach at the University of Florida. How did that come about, and what was kind of the tricky points making that transition?
Yeah, kind of a backstory to that is that a lot of people don't know that I actually worked with the women's program before, back in the 80s, with Lau Knudsen kind of as a graduate assistant, even though I wasn't in graduate school, but I was labeled as a graduate assistant. And so I'd had a little experience at the collegiate level. I actually coached a group that broke the world indoor record in the 4x8 back then. That were the Brash, Sandra and Sonia Brash, Chris Crowther, and my homegirl, she's gonna kill me. I'm drawing a blank on her name. I can see her face right now.
Yeah, don't get yourself in trouble.
Yeah, I just did. Oh my God. But anyway, Susan Nash.
There you go.
So I had some experience, but how that kind of came about was interesting because, they had let the former staff go, and then it was announced that Doug Brown was going to be the head coach. And I was actually in school at the time working towards my degree. And because I didn't have my degree, I didn't think that there was any chance that I would get hired here. And I remember I was working with Mark Everett at the time, and Mark came to me and he goes, "Look, I want you to apply for the job." I'm like, "They're not going to hire me." He goes, "You need to apply for the job." So then I saw him a couple of days later and he goes, "Look, if you don't at least pick up the phone and call and inquire about it, the next time I see you, you and I are going to fight." Right? And that's Mark. And because I knew that he was serious, not that I was afraid, but not that either I wanted to fight him either. Right. So I picked up the phone and I called, and then it just kind of evolved. At first, Coach Brown had somebody else in mind. And I had gone on, I was down on a little mini vacation with my girlfriend at the time. And all of a sudden my beeper, I had one of those little beepers. I mean, it's how long ago it was.
Yeah, I was about to say, that was definitely an age statement right there.
Yeah, I just dated myself. And then next thing I know, like, I'm on the phone with Doug Brown. And he's like, "Look, if this doesn't work out, I'm going to give you a call." And ironically, about a week later or so, he gave me a call. And, the crazy thing about it is the guy he wanted to hire is the guy who's now, like, he's my best friend, Daryl Anderson at TCU. Yeah. Like, we were the absolute best friends.
Wow, yeah.
Yeah, he was the best man in my wedding. I was the best man in his. Yeah.
Oh, man, I love DA. Absolutely.
Yeah,
that's
my
awesome.
guy, man. Yeah.
Oh, that's so interesting. We always talk about it's a small world, and inside of track, it's maybe even a smaller world. That's really cool. Wow.
Yeah.
Maybe take a step back before we get into how that transition occurred and what struggles you might have had. So you're from Columbus, Ohio. How did you get down to Florida and maybe Gainesville?
Well, my senior year in high school, I'm going to date myself again. Okay. We ran out of coal to heat the schools. Yeah.
Well, hold on.
So
The phone,
yeah,
the internet must have gone bad there. It
nope,
sounded like you said you ran out of coal to
cold,
heat the
the school.
classroom.
Exactly. So because we were out of coal and at almost simultaneously, the teachers went on strike. So our coach put us in a van and drove us down to Gainesville. And I met Brooks Johnson, who's a legendary coach, and was able to get some tips from him. And we liked it here in Gainesville. I wasn't a great student, but I wasn't a bad student. And my coach thought it would be a good idea for me to go to a junior college and become a better student and to work with Brooks. And so next thing I knew, that was like probably in January or so, maybe December. I forget exactly when it was, but next thing I know, I was packing my bags in August to come back down to Gainesville. And that was August of 1977, and I've been here ever since.
So was that Broward Community College?
Santa Fe
Or
Community College.
Santa Fe? Yeah, Santa Fe. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So it sounds like you were working towards becoming a coach back then. Was that always in the plan, or were you an athlete
No,
first?
I was like a lot of kids at that age, confused. Uh, I think you always have those ideas. I think I'm going to be an Olympian. You have those ideas. Like I really thought I was going to be a lawyer, because of some things that happened in my past, and so I thought that was going to go that route, and then it just kind of unraveled because I'll be the first to tell you that I didn't dot my I's and cross my T's at that age. I kind of got down here and was away from my parents and had all this freedom, and I just didn't do the things I was supposed to do. And then one day I wake up and I'm 27 years old and I have a baby, and then I realized I got to go back and get my degree and get my life going on the right path so I can take care of her. And so that kind of started the whole thing going.
Wow. I love looking back when we get to a certain age. You can look back at certain things that happened, and they were just small forks in the road, whether you moved to
Mm-hmm.
Gainesville or not, and whether the
Yeah.
coal ran out or not.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And what a major impact they ended up having in your career and life.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Absolutely.
amazing. So thanks for catching us up to how you got to Gainesville. That was way more interesting than I thought it was going to be.
No
So
problem. Man.
when you went full time at Florida as the assistant coach,
Mm-hmm.
was there any struggles that you had? Was it all you dreamed of? Was it more difficult?
I'll be honest with you. Probably in the first 5-6 months, I didn't sleep much. I spent a lot of time in the office trying to figure things out, whether it be training thoughts, training ideas, recruiting. I'd recruited a little bit before, but I never recruited men. I had never had to deal with, like, one of the biggest things I struggled with was we had walk-ons, and they only had like a 2-week period of that they could try to impress us. And if they didn't impress us in the 2-week period, then we basically got rid of them. I'm a high school coach. We didn't cut anybody. I didn't know how to walk up to a guy and go, "Hey, you can't be out here anymore." I think another struggle I had was because I was always in control of my own destiny when I was a high school coach, because I was a head coach and I controlled my own destiny. I was always kind of fearful that something was going to happen and we weren't going to be there anymore. So that just drove me hard to make sure I was going to be good, because I didn't want to have to depend upon anybody but myself for my well-being.
That's interesting. That's an interesting aspect as an assistant coach of a program versus a head coach, whether it's a high school or college program there.
Yeah.
And so I always like to talk about the bridge between business and track and field coaching. Now, having myself personally done both, coached for 10 years and now 10 years plus on the business side. And I think sometimes people get into coaching. I think most of the time people get into coaching because of their passion for track and field and their passion for helping people. And they, in their head, when they see the vision of being a track coach, it's always on the track. It's in the sand pit with a long jumper. It's setting up hurdles for hurdles practice. But that's not always the case. And certainly as NCAA rules have gotten more and convoluted more, there is a lot more office time, whether it's paperwork that you have to have filled out. And for you, I'd love to learn more about, as the head coach of a major program, so you have lots of expenses and lots of expenditures. What's it like running the business of a track program? Budgets, travel, staff?
Well, I think that the first thing I'm going to tell you is I have an incredible staff, and that makes my job a lot easier. And because I can give them responsibilities, that makes my job a lot easier. And we talk about it, and they live for, hey, we need to make sure we are taking things off a coach's plate, not putting things on them. My program coordinator, Teresa LeGros, actually she's our director of ops now. She's, our track and field director of ops. She does a phenomenal job with all aspects of, the budget, ordering, making sure we have travel, hotels. It's funny, we mentioned DA earlier, and he'll ask me sometimes, like, where you guys staying? I'm like, I don't know. This is what do you mean? I'm like, I'll find out when we get there. I trust him. I trust her. I trust Melanie Welty, and I know that when we get there, it's going to be a good hotel. It's going to be a good situation. And, so I'm very blessed in that aspect of things. So that allows me to spend a little more time on the track versus where somebody else might have to spend a little more time in the office. But because I have such a great staff, as you know, we have Frank Caraway down in the equipment room. He does a phenomenal job for us as well. My trainer, Andy Clark, and his assistant, Yolanda Lawrence, and, my strength coach, Matt Delancey. They're all people that allow me to do my job at a high level. I get those calls and questions, say, hey, what do you guys do in the weight room during this period? I'm like, I don't know. I trust my strength coach, and he doesn't mess it up. So, we're good.
Yeah, I can echo that as someone who's, I don't want to say dealt with, who's worked with a lot of your staff, Melanie and Nick and Frank, and now I'm going to get myself in trouble. Throws coach is
Steve Lemke.
Steve, yeah,
Steve
thank
Lemke.
you.
Yeah.
Again, that's where I just throw it out there. I'll get in trouble.
Yeah, don't forget that guy.
Yeah,
man.
exactly. Oh, I know. All great people. It's interesting.
Yes, they are.
You mentioned the strength coach. So how long have you had the strength? That's a lot of tension sometimes for a track coach, is the strength coach, whether they are doing things that you believe you should be doing as a track coach versus the strength and conditioning side. How long have you had this individual, and how did you come to such a good working relationship?
He's been working with our throwers for a long time, and he's always been on staff here, worked with the swim team, and then we had a change, and when that change happened within football, I requested him to take it. I asked him, can you handle all of our athletes? And he said, yes. We sat down, we talked about what I do, how I do. And I think the thing that he gets that a lot of strength coaches don't get is that while they may be the strength and conditioning coach for, say, volleyball or football, they're just our strength coach. We do our own conditioning. And I've never had a problem with Matt. Matt has, from day one, always said, hey, I work for you. You tell me what you need from me in terms of where you want them to be and want them to be ready. And I'll make sure they're ready. And, with the exception of 2016, when we both, tried something a little different, and it didn't work really well for us at the conference level. I think we were 6th at the conference meet, or 6th or 7th. And then a month later, we were national champs because we came back. We sat down, we talked about it, we figured out what the problems were. And, I remember he calls me coacher. I remember him telling me, coacher, don't worry, I got this. And like I said, a month later, we were on point.
What's this man's name again? Matt
Delancey.
Man, shout out to Matt.
Yes.
I all through my coaching career and through a lot of conversations with coaches, the conflict of the strength and conditioning program and the track coach, usually specifically with the power events, the sprints, jumps, hurdles, and throws, is almost universal, that they don't understand that what we do on the track is always going to trump what we do in the weight room, but we do want to do the weight room. We know that's important, but it can't be getting trashed in the weight room, and we can't do the that we want to get out there. So, man, shout out to Matt.
Absolutely.
He has that maturity.
He's phenomenal. I call him my secret weapon. He is absolutely outstanding.
We're going to publish this, so it's not going to be secret anymore.
It's okay. It's okay. Because it's not like I haven't said it before. This is not the first interview I've done. I tell him that. I tell all the recruits that. He is just very masterful of what he does. He takes a lot of pride in what he does. And, he's a guy I can call and say, hey, so-and-so I feel like they're a little weak on the left side with their trail leg. And he'll come out and watch practice, and he go, Coach, I'll get it fixed. And he does. Never fails.
Wow, man. We need a guy like Matt to talk more in the strength and conditioning world about strength and conditioning specifically for track athletes, man.
Yes, absolutely.
That's awesome. That's really good.
Absolutely.
Your former AD and now your current AD, Scott Strickland, are very, Jeremy Foley and now Scott Strickland are very high performing ADs. They expect a lot out of their head coaches. University of Florida and some of the other places that those guys have been spend a lot of money on all their different sports, and track is no different. So they expect returns on that. You have given them those returns with multiple national titles and conference titles. But what's it like working under a boss, an athletic director that is, I mean, these guys, if you don't know these guys are really hard charging. You'll be able to share, well, I don't know if you'll be able to share stories, but I know you know what I'm talking about. That the expectation is extremely high. What's it like working under that type of expectation?
I will tell you this, is that they have both gotten a bad rap, because I remember the first interview I did when Jeremy hired me, and someone asked me, how was I going to deal with the expectations? And I told them that Jeremy can't expect anything more of me than I expect from myself. I mean, this is University of Florida. You know the job when you take it. So if you're going to walk in here and take the job and then say you guys are asking too much of me, it doesn't matter where I am. I mean, that's one thing that my parents, my dad beat into my head. If you got a job, you do it well. There's no half doing anything. And so the expectation that Jeremy always said to us was, I want you working hard enough. I want to see that you're trying to win. I know you can't win every year, but I expect you to be trying to win. And why would I take this job if I would try to win? I remember one of the first things I said to the media when I got the job was that my goal is to make sure that the Gator Nation is proud of us every March and every June. That's my goal.
I love that.
I think we're doing okay.
Yeah. I went through your bio before we started recording today, and honestly, I got tired of seeing championship, this many Olympia. I was like, all right, okay. I get it. I like that line about you can't have a higher expectation of me than I have of myself. That really makes me think about when, even when on the business side, when we hire people and interview people and things like that, of really digging down to, well, what is your expectation of yourself for this job? So in the coaching world, as you hire an assistant, what is your expectation for
Mike, I think, and that's a problem in the athletics world, obviously, but I think also in life in general, is that a lot of times people want jobs because of the salary involved with the job. And then they get the job and they get the salary, and then they forget to continue to work to keep the job and keep the salary. And so my thing has always been is that I have an expectation of myself that we want to be competitive every single year. And I know that Jeremy wants that. I know that Scott wants that. But never one time has either one of them come down to me and go, you better win, or you better do this, or you better do that. I love the fact that we're one of the last teams to go, in the spring, because, we're always able to bump up our conference cup thing and whatever the Series Cup, whatever it's called now, the Capital Cup, whatever it's called. I love the fact that we can help you be one of the last teams to help boost that up. I think it's great that
you're the anchor leg.
Yeah,
you and baseball. Yeah.
Us baseball, softball.
I'll say baseball and softball always are up there too. Yeah.
Three pretty good legs to have to come in at the end. But I think that goes to, Jeremy's, ability to hire coaches, his vision with coaches and the things that he can see in the people. And I think that if you look at what we've done since Scott's been here, Scott walked into the worst situation in the world, if you ask me, because if we fell apart, you know what I mean? Okay, he's terrible. He couldn't do what Jeremy did. And if we continue to be successful, Jeremy left him in great shape. So, Scott gets no credit either way. But the credit that what Scott's done is Scott's come in here and he's done things his way. He's been Scott Strickland, and it works, Obviously, there was an incredible baseline here, incredible foundation here. But like I just talked about, some people have taken over foundations and cracked them, and Scott never did.
Yeah.
He never did.
Yeah, that's interesting. Outside looking in, it is easy to say, oh, well, yeah, of course he's doing well as the AD at Florida. Look what he got left. But you don't realize that every year, and we're seeing that this year for sure, but every year has its own challenges and things like that. To maintain that
Absolutely,
level
yeah.
is a extremely hard job to
And the
do.
thing about both of those men is they don't crack under pressure. Like nothing rattles them. And that's why they're great ADs. That's why they're phenomenal ADs, because they don't crack under pressure.
Have you learned from them on the business side of how to run a program, as far as, because when you said crack under pressure, I think of you. I remember being at Texas A&M one year for the indoor nationals here in the last 3 years, and it came down to the 4x4, and you happened to be maybe about 20 feet from where I was. We were on the back stretch, and I just watched you during the race. It was a phenomenal race. But I just watched you and how you operated during the legs, being in the lead, coming back, things like that.
That was probably 2018 when
Okay.
when USC broke the world record.
Yes.
Texas A&M, they got the world best, and Texas A&M got the world record, and we were in 301 and we were third. You know, and but my thing is is that all I can do is control what the Gators do. And honestly, once the gun goes off, I can't control that. So all I can do is get my athletes prepared, put them in a position to be successful, and then let's see what happens. I'm not going to be biting my nails. I'm not going to, that's just not who I am. I think that if you go into any situation knowing you're prepared, you're going to be fine. And, my dad, God bless him, he passed away back in 2015. And if we talked twice a day, he would always, the last thing he would say to me is, remember, if you're going to pray, don't worry. If you're going to worry, don't pray. So I pray about it and I move on, my man.
I like that. Again, it's that, where's your faith, or where's your confidence coming from? And we're going to talk about this in a little bit, but yeah, I love that. Okay. Boy, that's really good. Again, watching you during that 4x4, it really did amaze me of that not cracking under pressure. You were steadfast during that whole time. You coaching that 4x4 didn't seem different than when I watched you coach the 60-meter prelims the day before. Right. It was the same. Okay, here's what I need to talk to my athletes about. Now let them go perform and see where the chips fall out for that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Speaking of pressures and high levels and cracking under pressure, things like that, you were named the head coach of our Olympic team, which we're supposed to be finishing or getting ready for our NCAA championships and then going into trials and then Olympics. And of course, we're delayed till next year. Talk to me about what was it like when you were announced as the head coach of the Olympic team, and what did that mean to you?
I will preface this by saying that it's an absolutely incredible honor. And it's one that you don't realize what kind of feeling it is until you actually happens. There's been talk about it since back in the early 2000s that it might happen. And, but that's not me. I'm not concerned about those things. But once it happened, it was just an incredible honor. It remains so to this day. I'm a guy that was always more concerned with being a coach of Olympians. It was never my goal to be the Olympic coach, but it's always been my goal since I got into this arena, back in like 1991 and 92 when I started working with Dennis Mitchell, to have somebody at the Olympics, and so fortunately I haven't missed one since then. I've had somebody at every Olympics since 1992 with Dennis. And, so that's always been my charge, is to make sure that I have people there. And I'll be honest with you, my charge is to make sure we have, we, meaning our group here in Gainesville, have people in Tokyo next year, because I don't want to be the guy there that's just there helping everybody else's athletes. I'm gonna do everything I can to help everybody else, but I need to be there coaching. I just can't be sitting around doing press conferences, and it's not me. I need to be out there in the trenches, man.
I was just about to say, I don't see that being very comfortable for you.
No, not at all. Not at all.
You said you've had an athlete in every Olympic since 92. That's 7, counting 20. That's 7 Olympics in a row.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it's been 6, and 20 or 21 will make it 7 once we get that done.
Yeah. And you're the coach, so you don't get to do this, but I get to assume you're going to have someone there.
I appreciate that.
See, I'm on the outside. I get to say like, it's going to happen. Right. With the delay that's caused because of everything that's been going on, has that added any extra work, or is it just, okay, everything's just been delayed for a year and we'll,
everything's just delayed. The USATF, USOC, that's their job. They'll tell us when to be, where to be, why to be, and I'll show up and do what I'm supposed to do. But at the end of the day, it's not about, I tell people all the time, it's not like I'm the basketball coach or softball or whatever. I'm the head track coach. And as you know, from being in track and field, everybody has their own coach. So my job is to make sure that those people have access to their coaches, that they get to the call room on time and stuff like that. My job is not to go over there and say, hey, I wouldn't do the blocks that way. I wouldn't do this workout. That's not my job. And I'm not going to do that. I'm only going to go over there, work with the athletes that I have qualified for the USA team, and make sure that my staff and I are readily available, because that's the big dance. And you don't want to have anything go wrong for the athletes there during that time. And that's our job, to make sure that everything stays status quo.
I've the highest level I was able to coach at was SEC and NCAA. I'd never had a kid go to trials or Olympics, so it was fascinating for me over the last couple of conversations with Harry Mara, talking about the Olympics. And I get the luxury of being on the outside on all these things, that you would think, it's the Olympics, like you talked about, it's the big dance, it's the best of the best, it's the gold medal, world records, it's everything, right? It's everything. So you would think that, everything runs perfectly. And Harry was talking about how, because of so many different things, whether it's language barriers, transportation, logistics, there's a lot of hiccups that the athletes and coaches have to overcome as they're going through this. How do you prepare a new athlete that's going to go to Olympics for the first time? How do you prepare that, hey man, something's going to go wrong, you have to be able to overcome it?
But I will tell you this, that's life. That's something we talk about on a daily basis here. I mean, things are going to go wrong. We have our team meetings. My team meetings aren't rah-rah. My team meetings are, hey, we know our job. We got to do our job. Something's going to go wrong. And when that something goes wrong, you go to the person that can fix it. Don't try to fix it yourself. And again, I think, I'm not sure about Harry's experiences, but I've been around USA Track and Field again since the 90s. I never had a problem with it. Never. Like, if there was an issue, they always took care of it. If there was even a slight issue, So I mean, again, I can't speak to him, because obviously maybe he had some issues, but I've never had a problem that USA Track and Field didn't foresee, or if they heard about it, they got it taken care of.
Yeah, and I'm not talking about, he didn't actually even give examples of USATF, more of the organizing, all the volunteers, et cetera. And so, like, one of the examples that really struck out to me was in the heptathlon with Bree. She was in the last heat of the hurdles, and then they walked them straight over to the high jump. Well, all of the last flight of the hurdles, all their high jump shoes got stuck back underneath the stadium, instead of being out there for them to change. So things like that, like they had to start warming up without their shoes and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, not to USATF.
Well, again, see, I'm not a multi-coach, so I don't, my guys better have their shoes when they go out on the tracks.
How happy are you're not a combined events coach?
We've dabbled in a little bit here. It can be a challenge from the multi-event side, because you could be on this incredible high. I remember one year, not to pick on Gray Horn, is one of our all-time
great guy. Greats. I love Gray.
Yeah. And so we get to a meet, and he no heights in the pole vault, and another time he gets to meet, it was just always indoors with Gray. Then he gets to meet another year indoors, and he falls in the hurdles. He was like 11 seconds, and then get to his last meet indoors, and he's having a phenomenal meet on his way to a big PR, and he did something to his groin area warming up for the pole vault. So like those are the the highs and lows of the multi competition. And your multi-eventer better be like a pitcher and have a very short memory. It's have a very short memory.
Yeah, for sure. And you increase with 10 events or 7 for the women. You increase. You talk about groin injuries. You increase the frequency of how many times something like that can happen in a meet, right? Yeah. I love that you brought up Gray. I got to really get to know Gray after he graduated Florida, and just I just love that kid.
Like, great guy. from Ohio, so they get a little extra love for me because of that. You know, me and my Ohio boys. So.
I just called him a kid. I was like, it's hard to call him a kid now. He's been coaching for so long.
Yeah, he has. He jumped right into it. He did.
He did.
Yeah.
Do you have a lot of alumni there in the coaching world?
Oh yeah, geez. You got Aaron Tucker.
Oh, Tuck, yeah.
Who's at Penn State. Yeah. Tuck at Penn State. Adrian Mann, who's here with me.
Mm-hmm.
There's a young man named Ethan Tusing who is at he was actually a manager and then a kind of a graduate assistant, volunteer assistant here, more a volunteer assistant here. He's at VCU. You got guys like Mike Eskin, who's in North Carolina. Now, Mike didn't go to school here, but he did do some graduate work here, and he was a volunteer for us. Holland Shear was a volunteer here, and he's an assistant coach at Mississippi State. Jeez. Oh, Dennis Martins, I think he's at Tiffin now, you know. Willie Perry, who's at North Carolina Central. There's a lot of Gators out there.
That's awesome.
A lot of Gators in the high school ranks, and I'm sure I'm missing. You got me in trouble again.
No. That was one where there were so many. You can't get in trouble.
And it started with Gray Horns. We can't forget.
That's right. About Gray won't be upset.
Yeah, Bridget Owens is up at Central Michigan or someplace like that. You know, on the women's side, and so no, there's some alumni out there. I know Amani Bryant's coaching at the collegiate level. I forget the name of it. She's at a small school. Alicia Ursery was at Southern Illinois for a while, and I heard her husband just moved to Texas. She's at a high school there. There's a lot of Gators out there.
That's awesome. That's really good. You have such a tradition there, Florida, with track and field. So I could only imagine that a good percentage went on to the teachers to hopefully coach in the high school levels, and then some on the college levels. That's awesome.
And I'll tell you this, Mike. I think the proudest I am is of the fact that the doctors, the lawyers, the international business people, the success stories in life. The athletic side of it has obviously been a phenomenal ride. But when I hear from, the guy that was a walk-on that was told that, I'm not sure you can make it here at Florida. He's international business, graduate degree, master's degree, and he owns 2 businesses in Texas. Now, he wasn't going to make it, right? So, it's those stories, man. It's those people that's what this is about for me. It's not just about the athletic side of it. That's phenomenal. Don't get me wrong. But it's the people that really warm my heart. That's what gets me.
That's awesome. We do, we talk a lot about athletes and coaches, but even on the interview side, I have to remind myself we are talking about student athletes. And
exactly.
The greatest slogan or whatever the NCAA has ever come out with is that we all go pro in something. And in track and field, it's most likely not track and field.
Exactly.
For any sport, it's not most likely it's not that sport. So the doctors, the lawyers, the business owners, things like that. That is the number of kids.
And I think that's something people don't. I mean, this is a very, obviously a very demanding business, but it's brutal. I mean, I think like less than 5%. Or even less than that, 4% or so of the people that are head coaches will ever win an NCAA championship. Think about that. So you can spend 30 or 40 years doing this and never win an NCAA championship. The percentage of people that actually go pro in sports is minute. So, the educational piece is very important.
Yeah. Good point about the number of coaches that will actually win an NCAA championship, team championship. I remember speaking directly about that. I went up to Robert the one year they won at A&M, might have been 17 as well. They won by some ungodly amount on the women's side. They were huge favorites and everything.
Well, they've done it on the men's side a couple of times. Like I think in 2015, we scored 70 points at the outdoor meet. They beat us by 18 points.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember walking up to them after the indoor one where they won. It was 20-30 points. It was huge. And I was like, hey man, I know how hard this is. I don't care what anybody says. This was not easy. Even though you won, it is not easy, man.
Yeah.
Speaking of not easy, you have done a really good job on Facebook of really making people who are friends with you on Facebook feel like we're in track season. You not only current clips, but man, some really classic. You must spend a lot of time on YouTube, my friend.
Lately I have. Yeah, I got a lot of free time.
A lot of classic videos as well. But recently, you showed a 2017 clip of the women's 200-meter final. So talking about not easy, what a dramatic race. I remember it specific. I remember where I was sitting in the stands and the whole nine. Your athlete, Kyra Jefferson, ended up being the recipient of, I don't want to call it luck, because I know Kyra put in a ton of preparation. She performed like she was supposed to perform, and she won the 200-meter title. You had made the comment on Facebook about if that warm-up track, if that call room could talk. And I kind of prodded you a little bit like, yeah, keep talking. What would it say? So
Yeah.
I'd love to learn. Give us some insides there to that event.
I'll share a little bit with you. You know, Kyra and I are really close. She calls me grandpa. And so I won't get into great specifics, but I will tell you that, you know, Kyra in 2015, I don't know if people remember her, she ran 22.3 at the conference meet. And then she ran 22, 20-something in the preliminary. And I felt like she ended up running 22.24 and being fourth in the final. And I felt like I let her down because I didn't do what I usually do. I'm like, oh, she's ready. I don't want to overdo it. And because I didn't put a little bit of me into her, I didn't think like she ran as well as she could have that day. And it really hurt her confidence. And then the next year in 2016, she's having a phenomenal year. She runs 11.17 at the Tom Jones meet. She goes to the conference meet. She runs 11.28 to a headwind, wins the conference, and then she hurts her hamstring. Olympic year, she wants to go pro, and everything just fell apart. And so I sat down, I put this masterful plan together. I got to make sure all she had was outdoors. Got to make sure we're dotting our I's and crossing our T's. And I wanted to make sure that we did not run 22.2 at the conference meet. You know, she didn't know that. You know, I discussed it with her mother, but I'm like, I'm not letting her know this because I don't want to make her think I'm holding her back. So as we approached the meet, she thought she wasn't ready. She don't even run like 22.4 one time. And like, literally, she came to me in tears at the regional meet, like, what's going on? I was like, Kyra, just trust me. You're going to be fine in 2 weeks. And so knowing that Miss Stevens was on fire and knowing that Ariana Washington was the defending champ and, you know, knowing that I had let her down before, I just did me, man. And I just told her, I said, that I'm going to be with you to the end. I'm going to make them run me out of the call room. I'm going to make them tell me I can't be with you anymore. Everything she did in the warm-up area, I was right there beside her. You know, I can't tell you what I said, but I was there. You know, people that know me know how I get a little bit.
Remember, I told you I can't edit this, so I can't bleep and all that kind of stuff.
Right. And it's funny because Tim Hall always says to me, I want to know what you're whispering in their ear. I'm like, I can't tell you. I have to kill you. I can't tell you. And so there was a lot of whispering going on with Kyra. You know, you walk them to the table to check in. She checks in. I just walk back there with her, you know. They told me after I came, Coach, you know you can't be back. I'm like, oh, okay, you're right. And so I started to walk away, and I went right back over where I was, you know. So my big thing was letting her know, hey, I'm here with you, you know. And because I knew she was ready to do something like that. That wasn't a surprise to me. She still says it was a surprise to her, but it wasn't a surprise to me at all because she's that big of a talent. So I just, as my guys would say, Coach just went into his bag that day. You know, and that's what I did. And it worked out pretty good.
She went to her bag. She not only won, but that was the college record as well.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Wow.
I think the officials at Oregon for turning the rates around.
Oh yeah, sure.
Because if not, she'd have been running into a 1.5 headwind. I don't think she'd have ran that fast.
That was the year, wasn't it, like downpouring during the 100-meter prelim or semis and stuff? Wasn't the weather real bad there that year, if I remember right?
I don't remember.
I remember being on the
they all kind of
stretch.
run. Yeah, they all kind of run together.
Yeah, and it's Oregon, so if I say it rained, it's probably true anyway.
I will leave that alone. See, Robert's going to hear this and claim that I was bad about it. Nope, I'm not in it. Robert,
full disclosure,
Mike Cunningham said
that. Hey, rain or not, performances happen there, and again,
I've
collegiate record.
Never been to a bad meeting in Eugene. Never.
Agreed.
Never.
Agreed. I mentioned Facebook, and another thing that really interests me, Mike, for personal and professional reasons is while you're doing a ton of YouTube videos right now, you have consistently, that's the other thing I'm real interested in here, is consistently you have shared Bible verses throughout. I don't know if it's at a certain same time, it comes in your feed kind of random, but for me, so I don't know if it's at a certain time, or is it when you're reading the Bible? Talk to me about your faith and how you interact that with coaching.
It's generally the first thing in the morning. And I've always been a big proponent of, how your day starts is how it's going to flow. And if you start your day in a bad mood, more than likely you're going to stay in a bad mood. And the Bible centers me. There's always messages in Scripture. And a few years back, I don't know how long ago, I just said, you know what? I'm going to start sharing the things that touch me when I read them. I'm just going to copy and paste them and share them. And it's a lot of people comment like you do, that it helps them get their day off to a great start. And that makes me feel better. It makes me feel great about, that the word's getting out there. I'm not ashamed of my faith. I know there are people in the world that don't share my faith. I know there are people in the world that think that whatever they think, but that's them. I'm not ashamed of who I am and what my faith is. And as I shared with you earlier, my dad always told me how important prayer was, so I pray a lot. And I have faith that when the right time comes, if it's what God wants for me, then my prayers will be answered. Sometimes I may pray for something and God might go, I'm not sure that's what I want to do for you right now. And I have to be man enough to understand that all my prayers aren't going to be answered the way I want them answered. But at the end of the day, I am not ashamed of who I am. And working where I work, the success that we have had here, because I put my faith out like that, I get a lot of criticism and I laugh about it. I shared this with a young man about 3 weeks ago who wasn't enamored with some of the stuff that I do. And I said to him, look beyond what you perceive me to be and, start talking to some people that are around me every day. Look at the life that I lead. There's a lot of blessings in my life. I posted a picture of my family the other day. What an incredible blessing, to have a wife, to have have grandchildren that love me and allow me to love them. The greatest blessing I've ever had in my life.
Yeah. First of all, that was a great picture of your family.
Thank
and
you.
I do enjoy seeing MJ and the rest of the gang and the activities, the non-coach. That's actually probably people, if they were to see a chart of the Facebook posts that I like or that I love and things like that, they are rarely when a coach shares my athlete won this or did that. It's more of when they share family and stuff like that. And that's where, I've been really just speaking into coaches that, okay, if during this time period that we're not on the track and we're not traveling to meets, then please, please, please use this time to pour into your spouse and your family and your friends. Because God bless, in April, we don't ever get a chance to do that. We're always on the road.
Yeah, and it's funny because you mentioned the number of YouTube videos and stuff that I've been putting up. And, I had an alumni call and asked me to do that. That was never a thought of mine. But Steve Pena, is a lawn jumper here and a great guy. He's another one of those success stories. He's a very successful lawyer and agent up in the Philadelphia area. And, he called me and asked me, he actually challenged me, Coach, I need you to do this. I want you to show the alumni, the history of the program so we can talk about it amongst each other. So I'm like, okay, challenge accepted. I got a little free time. I can handle you.
Yeah. And something tells me when you accept a challenge, you accept it. It's not, I'm going to do it 25%. I'm going to do it at 100.
100% for sure.
Yeah.
Sometimes 110, but I'm going to definitely give it my absolute goal. Yeah.
I think that goes back to you can't have a higher expectation of me than I have of myself.
Right. And I'm a competitor. I'm the guy that I can have a friendly conversation, a friendly debate with anyone. I forget, I heard somebody say this, I don't know, a movie clip or maybe I read it. Like, I can work with anybody, but I will not be handled. Like, it's okay for you to have an opinion. It's okay for your opinion to differ than mine, but we need to be disrespectful, And so, like, it's okay if people don't like my faith. It's okay if you don't agree with me about how things work in this world. Just don't be disrespectful with your disagreement. And I'm okay with that. because it doesn't matter anyway. I want to keep doing what I'm doing. So.
Right. Yeah, that's right. And I've always been impressed with how open you've left your network, meaning how selfless you've been to reach out to people and allow people to reach out to you and you communicate back. I remember a time, now you got to be honest with me if you remember this or not, Mike. You had just gone from Buchholz to Florida. I was still coaching high school at the time. So this would have been, oh man, 94, 95. When did you come to Florida?
The summer of 95.
Yeah. So, okay. This has been 95, 96. I moved to college in 97. So right around there. This is back in the AOL days. And
oh, wow.
Somehow I had I don't know how, maybe everybody had everybody's username, but I reached out to you through AOL and had a chat with you about how, hey, I'm coaching high school. You're now at Florida. You coach. I want to coach college. How did you do it? And, what recommendations do you have? And so here, even back then, Florida was the epitome. I mean, come on, it's one of the top institutions there is for athletics and academics. And here I am, just a high school coach in Chicago. And I remember you answering my message and talking with me about those things. And it really, that was where I became a Mike Holloway fan, because I was like, man, this guy, he is not too big for his britches that he can't talk to a guy asking questions. And I've seen that throughout the years with other coaches who I've talked to, and they're like, oh yeah, I emailed Coach Holloway out of the blue and he responded and things like that. It's just, it's really refreshing.
Yeah, I don't remember that. That's been a long time ago. And my memory is not as good, but it's not that good. But I will tell you that happens because of people that poured into my life. And it is not a big deal for me to take a moment to pour back into someone else's, because if I'm not willing to share the knowledge I've gained, if I'm not willing to share my experiences, how can I, one, call myself a true Christian and a man of faith? And two, how can I then, how do I say this? How am I then being true to the people that poured into me? I think it's important to give back. I think it's very important.
People pouring into you, and you mentioned someone of Brooks Johnson's caliber earlier in today's podcast. Who are other mentors that you've had, maybe specifically as track coaches, but maybe even outside of track coaching?
Well, I mean, I think obviously my biggest mentor has been my mother. She's phenomenal. And, I shared, Chris Huffins is a good friend of mine, and we talked about this, I think it was earlier today. We had been second at the 2004 indoor and outdoor, 2005 indoor and outdoor meets. And we're in Sacramento after the 2005 outdoor meet. And I call my mom to report on the meet. And as soon as she hears my voice, she goes, "What's wrong with you?" I'm like, "Oh, we were second again." She goes, "Okay, what are you upset about?" Like, "I'm tired of being second." So she said, "Okay, well then be eighth next time." I'm like, "What? I don't want to be eighth." She goes, "The same reason the person that was eighth wants to be second. So second's a blessing." I'm like, "Come on, Mom." In my mind, I'm like, I know better than to say this to her. But in my mind, I'm like, can I have my own pity party here for a second?
Yeah, Mom, this is not what I was looking for.
Exactly. She's like, get over it. You were second. What a blessing. And then, Ed Stone, he was my high school coach, an incredible mentor, just a guy that, oh my God, I don't know where I'd be without Ed Stone. I don't. And
is he the coach that took you down to Gainesville?
Yes.
Oh,
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just an incredible guy. People like Bev Kearney. Bev Kearney was women's coach here when I was coaching at Buchholz High School. And, I had known her a little bit because she had coached a couple of friends of mine when she was up at Toledo. And so I got to know her through that. And then she was at Auburn and Tennessee. And so I had known her a little bit through being in the Southeast. And, she has shared a lot of wisdom with me, especially in the last 3 or 4 years. She's, it's kind of like my big sister. She likes to call me and, make sure that I'm staying on my P's and Q's. I have a lot of great friends in the coaching world, Daryl Anderson, Edric Floriel, Carol Smith Gilbert, Robert Johnson, that knucklehead, there's a lot of people that I'm just blessed to have in my life. And that I think it's important to surround yourself with people that are like you, but aren't afraid to tell you when you're wrong, My true friends aren't people like the people I mentioned. Don't care how many championships I've won. They don't care, what my resume says or what my paycheck is. We're friends because we're friends, and those are the people that I cherish in my life.
I like that message of they're ones that challenge you. They're not there just to say yes or dismiss you. It's like, hey man, I think you might be doing something wrong here. Or I think you may be thinking of something wrong. As your friend, I feel like I should be talking to you about this. Yeah.
And every one of those, the conversations wouldn't be that nice. The conversation would be, okay, stop it. That's enough. When we do that with each other, okay, we're not going to do that anymore. Agreed? Right. Okay, let's move on. But you have to have friends like that in your life. And I think it's important that when you're creating your circle of friends, that you understand you want people that can lift you up, they can help you become better. Because if they're not, even if they're not tearing you down, if they're not helping you get better, then what are they doing? There's just got to be, there's got to be some purpose to it.
That's really good words to end with today, except I do have one more question. And, again, Mike, I just told you how you don't remember me, but we've spoken since 96.
Clearly, we're still friends and we're still talking, so I remember you. I just don't remember the first conversation.
And really, the past, I don't know, 3-4 years, you and I have gotten to know each other a lot better. We've done some business together, which I'm 100% appreciative of. You even, and I don't want to tell this story, but you busted my chops in one of our first meetings. We were talking about Grant and PRs and blocks, and you shot back real quick, and I remember going, oh man, this guy has come to play. Okay, gotcha.
I told you I'm a competitor, man.
You are, man. I learned that lesson business-wise with you very quickly. So I've gotten to know you, and you've introduced your wife to me, which was just so humbling. So I've gotten to know you a little bit personally as well. But there is one story that I have never heard, never read anywhere. I think of a mouse as a timid little animal. I don't think of Mike Holloway as that. So please enlighten us. How in the world did you get the nickname Mouse?
Well, geez, I was a 7th grader, so I may have been 11 years old, I guess. And I was a really small guy. Like, I don't know if I weighed 100 pounds. I was really tiny. And I was very, very quiet. I was very timid, to be honest with you. And my junior high school coach, may rest in peace. His name is Eugene Shellman. The only thing we could run was, we couldn't run anything over 200 meters. So they had the 7th grade 4x4, was a 440 relay back then. I'm old. I'm out. Okay, so that's all we could run, unless you were fast enough to make the 4x2 as a 7th grader. And so my good friend Michael McCullough, we called him Moose. Moose and Mouse. That people just laugh about that. But Moose got moved up to the varsity 4x2. So then I was the next guy to get plugged into the 4x1. And the first time I ran it, I grabbed the stick and I ran really well. And Coach Shellman walked up to me and he put his hands out for me to give him 5. And he said, way to run, Mouse. And it stuck from that day. That's exactly how that happened.
Really?
That is a true story. Yep. And because before that, my nickname was Peanut. I didn't like that one very much. So I like Mouse a lot better.
So 7th grade,
yep.
Seemingly random. He had some reasoning for calling you that, but it's.
Well, he said that because when I ran, because I was quiet, and when I ran, it looked like I was scooting across the floor.
Now that's a mouse. Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
yeah. And
exactly.
That has stuck even through professional. I mean, people know I pick up my phone. If I go to call you, I go to my contacts and I type in MOUSE and there's Mouse Holloway.
Yeah.
That is amazing. Well, I tell you, I'm going to add the name Mighty to the front of it, because my friend, as a personal friend, as a professional in the track and field coaching world, as a professional in the business world that you and I also work in here, you are definitely a mighty mouse out there. I can't thank you enough. Not so much for being here today. I can't thank you enough for that, but honestly, your impact in these great men and women, athletically and more of my passion is with the coaches that you have mentored personally, the people that have gone through your program, but also the ones that share the stories with me of how they emailed you and you answered, or they saw you at a track and, you know, came up to you to introduce themselves to you, and you acted like you had known them for years. That impact is so positive for other coaches. And I know you're humble enough that you'll say, oh yeah, no, it's a big deal, Mouse. It really,
Thank you. I
really
appreciate
is.
that.
So from the bottom of our hearts, as people who love coaches, specifically track and field coaches, the people who are coaches, thank you so much for everything that you do.
You're very welcome, my friend. Very welcome.
We're excited to see the Gators and Team USA get on the track in 2021.
Yes, we're going to claim it. It's going to happen, my man. It's coming.
We're going to be happier than ever next year because we now know what we miss.
Exactly. Amen.
Awesome, man. Thank you so much for being here today on the podcast. Mike. Thank you.